Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We want to welcome our friends and guests in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri, Saalakhan. I am pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. March 2021 marks 1 year since my programming relationship with Salam Media began. By the grace of the Almighty, we have had a number of special programs, topics and guests on this platform over the past year. Today's program for me just might rank as the most special of all. Today, on this third Sunday in Women's History Month, we are going to talk about an extraordinary young woman who was taken away from us much too soon. Her name is Rachel Corrie. To begin today's conversation, we have a little piece of video we'd like for you to see.
I've been here for about a month and a half now, and this is definitely the most difficult situation that I've ever seen. In the time that I've been here, children have been shot and killed. On the 30th of January, the Israeli military bulldozed the two largest water wells, destroying over half of Rafah's water supply. Every few days, if not every day, these are demolished here. People are economically devastated because of the closure of the borders into Egypt and the extreme control of the Gazan economy by Israel. I came to look at the aftermath of a place where 25 greenhouses have been demolished on the other side of Rafah, destroying the livelihoods of about 300 people. And that had taken place while they rounded up about 150 men, held them under a sniper tower, and shot around them to contain the men, the farmers in the area. So I feel like what I'm witnessing here is a very systematic destruction of people's ability to survive. And that is incredibly horrifying. Incredibly horrifying. Sometimes it takes a while for it to set in what is happening here, because I think many of the people here, they try to maintain what they can of their lives, and I don't know, maybe it has to do with protecting their children, that they try to be happy, joke with their children. So sometimes it takes time to it's hard to hold in your mind, you know, the complete reality of what's happening here. Sometimes I'm sitting down to dinner with people and I just realize that that there is a massive military machine surrounding them and trying to kill these people that I'm having dinner with, these families that I'm sitting down to eat with, and who are being very generous and kind to me, and their children here who are incredibly threatened, living lives that no child ever should have to live. And so I feel a lot of horror, really. I feel a lot of horror about the situation. The current Israeli government, I don't have a great deal of faith that they're going to listen to any message from me. I think it has become clear that this government does not care about the safety of its own people and doesn't care at all about the lives of Palestinian people. I think it's ridiculous that my government supports this government and referred to Ariel Sharon as a man of peace. It's clear to me, being here, that Ariel Sharon is invested in perpetuating perpetuating violence. I think calling it a cycle of violence disregards the imbalance of power in this situation, that people's lives here are almost completely controlled by the Israeli government. And it's amazing that people are able to hold on to their humanity as much as they have.
Okay, that is actually the second video that I had wanted to have played. And so we're going to have to make a little adjustment here because, you know, the video that I had intended to be the first video to begin this discussion is the most disturbing of them all. This is the video that describes what happened to young Rachel Corrie on March 16, 2003. So instead of us going directly to the guests and then playing this video after the fact, let's just go on and play that video now and get it out of the way, Brother Sadiq.
Rachel Corrie, a 23-year-old American student, went to Gaza to join in these efforts, sending back emails to her parents.
I have been in Palestine for 2 weeks and 1 hour now, and I still have very few words to describe what I see. It is most difficult for me to think about what's going on here when I sit down to write back to the United States. Something about the virtual portal into luxury. I don't know if many of the children here have ever existed without tank shell holes in their walls, and the towers of an occupying army surveying them constantly from the near horizons. I think, although I'm not entirely sure, that even the smallest of these children understand that life is not like this everywhere.
It was Sunday afternoon in Charlotte, about noon actually, and I received a phone call, and my son-in-law, Kelly, was on the phone, and he asked if Craig was there. And something about the way he asked made me realize, I felt right away that something was wrong. And then I asked, why, Kelly? And he hesitated for a minute, and he said, we've had some very sad news. And then my daughter, Sarah, I could hear her in the background, and she got on the telephone, and she said, Mom, it's Rachel. And I think the first words out of my mouth then were, is she dead?
We were opposing the demolition of farmland and other property, Palestinian property, by Israeli destruction forces and bulldozers. And the bulldozer drove up, and it kept going, and she tried to move back, but she couldn't move back, and she got caught underneath. She got caught underneath the bulldozer. Many other internationals began to surround the bulldozer and yell at it and tell us that there is somebody there, and it did not stop.
Where Rachel was killed, she was protecting a doctor's home. And that's important to realize. And the 3 children, his wife, she knew that family, and that doctor felt that Rachel was like a daughter to him. He bought that house. It was in the middle of the neighborhood. There were other rows of houses between his house and the border. Those other homes, those other streets were all destroyed, and now it was his turn. And I've had people say, well, she was in a war zone, and Cindy points out that war zone is people's neighborhoods. Those are children.
Indeed. We are deeply privileged to have Craig and Cindy Corrie, the parents of Rachel Corrie, join us today for this heartfelt remembrance. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of peace to you, Cindy and Craig.
Alaikum assalam.
It's been a while since we last saw each other. How are you both doing? How are you holding up during this pandemic?
We're doing fine. We're very fortunate. We're in the age range now of people, of course, who are vulnerable, but we've been privileged to be able to remain at home most of the year. It's changed our lives a lot because we're accustomed to being out in the world with a lot of people, with a lot of wonderful people and a lot of organizations. But we're doing well. Thank you.
Great. You know, beyond the tragedy that unfolded in Rafah on March 16th of 2003, that took the life of your precious daughter and all that immediately followed, tell us, who was Rachel Corrie?
She was a remarkable child, and she was our third child. She was 5 years younger than her older siblings, who adored her, and she was very close to them and close to us. She, from the time she was a really small child, she had a way with words. She was very creative, imaginative soul, and she grew up here in the Pacific Northwest. We're sitting in the house where Rachel grew up. And as I look out, I'm staring at a tree that grew from a tiny seedling that she planted when she was in elementary school and is now, I don't know, 40, 50 feet high. But she was very close to nature, loved where we were living. Also helped, during her college years, helped us to understand more about where we're living, that we're actually living on the land of indigenous people who were here before. And she thought it was so important for us to think about who was here before the Squeattle people, who were part of the Squaxin Island Native American tribe here in the US. So she, from the time she was a small child, she was helping us to think beyond what our thinking had been. And, we spent a lot of time together. She loved books, she loved music, she loved art and poetry. So there were a lot of messes in her house too. She was, creative people are sometimes messy people, and she was in all of that creativity.
Yes, indeed. There's an incredible little piece of video that we're going to play at the end of young Rachel. I think she was in the 5th grade.
Yes.
Delivering this incredible speech. When you see that speech of her, in the 5th grade, she must have been about 10 years old, 9 or 10.
She was 10.
10 years old.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a rehearsed, memorized speech. I mean, she understood what she was saying. She understood it, and that comes through very clearly. And what else went into this? The development. Are your other children like that? They're not children anymore. They're adults. Are they the same way? And where did this come from?
I'm not sure, Mauri. We do have 2 other children, and they were older, as Cindy said, than Rachel. And the joy of having multiple children is they're all very different. And so, Rachel, it's when you're reminding me of that 10-year-old speech, which happened right before Thanksgiving. And we have a cousin that lives in our town, and her father, we were all together for Thanksgiving. Her father is an attorney who'd argued in front of the U.S. Supreme Court and a very powerful figure. And he was kind of outraged that these liberal teachers would take 10-year-old students and have them speak like Rachel had. I didn't get to hear the speech, but I heard Rachel defend her theories against this really powerful 80-something-year-old and really loving uncle of mine. And throughout either my uncle's life or Rachel's life, Rachel remains the only person I ever witness argue my uncle to a standstill. And then he realized he was arguing with a 10-year-old, and he kind of felt ashamed of himself. But we were all delighted. We all applauded Rachel. So she had a strength about her all of her life, and that strength led to her questioning her own beliefs. But she would defend them unapologetically.
Mm-hmm. And clearly that remained with her. The trip that she took to occupied Palestine, if I'm not mistaken, that was her first time ever making that journey. Am I correct?
That was her first time to go to Palestine, yes.
Uh-huh.
She had been out of the country before, but not to that region of the world.
And the other trips that she took out of the country, were they humanitarian kind of related, like as this one was?
They were both educational trips.
Okay.
The first one was when she was in high school, and it was a real turning point for Rachel. It was after the fall of the Soviet Union, and a teacher from Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk in eastern Russia had come to Rachel's high school with 5 students from Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk. And they spent about several months here in Olympia going to school with Capitol High School students. And one of those students lived in our home during that 3-month period. Okay. And of course had a big impact on Rachel. But then Rachel was among a group of 5 students and a faculty member from Capitol High School that were then selected to go to Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk for six weeks. And this was during her sophomore year of high school. And to go to school with students there and to live with the family there of the young woman who had been in our home. And, I think first of all, it was such a unique experience for her, so different from anything she had experienced living here in the United States. But it also really raised questions for her, because for so long she had heard such negative things about Russia and about the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. But here she was in the midst of the Russian people and Russian families whom she, engaged with and found to be good people, doing good things, wanting good things, and suffering at that time a great deal. Many were suffering. And so she questioned that. She wrote about it. There were actually articles carried in our local newspaper at the time that the students wrote back about their experience, and hers was one of those. But she saw the beauty in people there. She found the beauty. And I think that then made her start to question more deeply what she was seeing said and how things were conveyed. And of course, it's a very different thing reading about anything in our media or newspapers and then actually going into a setting. That was her first experience. She also had a college trip. It was an environmental ecology trip where she spent time with other students and faculty from the Evergreen State College in Belize. So she had a bit of that experience outside of our own country.
to travel to occupied Palestine?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
Yeah, do you know what factored into her decision to go to Palestine, to occupy Palestine, given, and I'm sure that you all had your concerns at the time, because it has always been, since, the establishment of the state of Israel, it has been a volatile, very volatile part of the world. So I'm sure you all had your concerns. What went into that decision?
First place, Mauri, Cindy and I were living on the East Coast at the time Rachel made that decision. She was here going to school in Olympia, Washington. Okay. So Cindy was more in tune with it, but the International Solidarity Movement was formed in, I believe it was 2001, and they had what they called a Freedom Summer in 2002, and some of Rachel's friends went to that. She knew a Jewish Israeli woman that taught at her school, and so she was learning about the situation in Israel-Palestine, although we weren't here to watch her. She would give us some hints about what she was thinking about, and like I suppose any normal 21, 22-year-old young woman, she's not telling us outright these things. She's trying to get her parents used to the idea. And I know we were concerned. Cindy looked up, we have family ties to India. And Cindy thought, well, maybe I can encourage Rachel to go to India instead. And I thought, well, can't you work in a soup kitchen in Seattle? Something we're a little more comfortable with. But we found out that Rachel was really serious in studying about this. She was taking lessons in Arabic, and it was actually her teacher who was teaching her Arabic, who's from what's now Nazareth and what's now Israel, so inside 48, as we would say. He was trying to talk her out of going so early. He said, if you just stay with the Arabic one more semester, you'll be fluent when you get there, and that'll be helpful. But I think she felt like if she didn't go when she planned to go, that it would be she was afraid of putting it off. Let's put it that way. And also it was clear that U.S. was going to go attack Iraq, and she wanted, I think, to be in Palestine, and in fact in Rafah, Gaza, when that occurred, because she felt that the world turned its attention to Iraq, that Israel then might try to do more destruction in Gaza, in the West Bank.
I would just add, the Palestinian issue had been with us all our lives, but it wasn't one that our family particularly connected to. We didn't have direct ties there. So we heard about it like other Americans on the news all the time, and frankly, would tune it out after a while, because it was that issue that would never have a solution. And so
we then thought,
yeah. And so Rachel really brought us, back to that. And then once she was there and started to write home, and we knew how incredibly careful she was with her words, and her observations, and what a really unique observer she was, that she really started to educate not just us, but our entire family, our extended family and friends as well.
After Rachel's death, you all led a campaign of accountability for what happened. What became of that campaign?
Well, we still try to go forward with that. But of course, at first, we were trying it through diplomatic means, I guess I'd say. You would think if something like that happens, that the first thing that you would hear, I guess, from the Israeli government is, oh my gosh, we're so sorry this happened. That was not forthcoming. We did actually have a communication with, I think he was the Consul General for Western United States from Israel, who sent his condolences. And then we met him later on, and he corrected that to make it clear to us that those were his condolences privately and not that of the Israeli government. So we went through diplomatic channels, but fairly early on, our State Department said that they suggested we also sue. We waited until the last day to file a lawsuit in Israeli courts, and we chose Israeli courts because we felt that would allow us to get information, to be able to bring witnesses and the military information into court. But so that was filed in, Rachel was killed in 2003. That was filed in 2005. Our first day in court was actually in March 10th of 2010. There's only a judge, there's no jury, and the judge will hear a day of testimony when he decides he wants to. So the last day of testimony, I believe, was in July 12th of 2011. The lower court findings was there given out in September of 2012, I believe. And the judge found completely with the Israeli government, and that was no surprise by that time. It was an extraordinary court proceedings, and we learned a lot. I thought often about, I guess, it goes on now, but certainly in the 50s, a black person in court in the South, and just how prejudiced it would all be. And of course, we're privileged. We're not going to live in Israel, and we had this just incredible support by our attorneys, both of whom are Palestinian Israelis. And then we had to have everything translated as it went on while we were in court, because it's all in Hebrew. So those were mostly Jewish people that, young people that were refusing to either go into the army or had left the army. So we had an amazing group of supporters while we were there, but it was a long process. And I think the final verdict we appealed the verdict, the final verdict from their high court was in February of 2015. And they found, I'll read you one of the things that they said in that high court. They said it was a war activity and the government cannot be held liable. And they quoted an explicit legislative directive of the Knesset takes precedence over directives of international law. So what they were saying is international law does not apply to Israel. And of course, we know they act that way, but I thought it was extraordinary that their high court would just come out and say it.
There has been a tremendous amount of a very positive attention brought to the ongoing, what many consider to be an ethnic genocide taking place in parts of that tortured land that's ironically referred to as the land of the prophets. As a result of what happened to Rachel, a lot of attention was brought to bear in the immediate aftermath, and for a number of years. I mean, there was a play made, and there were books and articles written. There were, very prominent folk who raised issues of what happened to Rachel and the lack of appropriate accountability for what took place. In fact, not only did that soldier, that IDF soldier, take her life in broad daylight in the presence of witnesses who were screaming at him to stop. He did it with an American-made bulldozer, which speaks volumes. One of those specially made bulldozers from Caterpillar. You all have taken, you know, the understandable pain and you know, the profound grief of what happened to your loved one, and you've translated it into something very beautiful. I mean, something that is a reflection of, no doubt, what Rachel would have wanted. You know, tell us about the Rachel Corrie Foundation and the work that you all are doing through this organization.
I'll start just by saying that even with the lawsuit that we were involved with in Israel, we proceeded with that, which was not against the individual soldiers, but against the Ministry of Defense there and the Israeli government. We did it because we knew that we, unlike the thousands of Palestinians who have been harmed, were in a position to be able to take a case like that forward and to bring attention to that, to everything that was happening there, and to how the institutions, even the courts in Israel, are implicated in the occupation and in the violations that occur, human rights violations that occur against so many Palestinian people there, all the Palestinian people there. So we, you know, some people, you know, a verdict, of course, was important, and we wanted accountability for Rachel. But we felt that that entire process was an educational process for us, but also for all the other people that were watching and for the people that we were able to share our experience with. With the Rachel Corrie Foundation, which was, it was founded really soon after Rachel was killed, but has continued now for 18 years. Our goals too are education and advocacy, connections, maintaining connections, which are very difficult. Of course, our connections to Gaza are so important to us. And thanks to the internet, we're able to do that. But Craig and I haven't been able to get into Gaza since 2012, which is, we had 5 trips there, 5 visits before that time. But the authorities at the border said we don't meet the criteria for going into Gaza, you know, at this point. And at this point, because of course, COVID, but even before that, because of the way in which Gaza is completely, it's so largely shut off from the rest of the world. We're not the priority people to go there. It's the priority is for Palestinians to be able to move in and out of Gaza, and that's not happening. And for them to be able to have their needs met there for food, for medicines, and everything else. So our role with the foundation is education and advocacy. Most recently, we did a webinar just this week, Remembering Rachel, in which we talked with Dr. Yasser Abu Jamai, who is the director of Gaza Community Mental Health Program. He talked about the effects of COVID, but of course, COVID is just layered over the years of isolation that Gaza has experienced. And he also talked about, and I think it's concerning, just about there is a way in which people in Gaza maintain each other's spirit, hold each other up through all of the trials that they've lived for. And he talked about how that's being challenged right now a bit, just because of the isolation that families have had to live with this past year because of COVID-19. We talked with Dr. Yasser. We talked with Ahmed Artema in Gaza, who is a poet and writer, has a family and children. His words, when he was looking over the fences and the barriers that surround Gaza, and he saw the birds fly over, and he thought to himself, my children should be able to move through those barriers and move back and forth. And it was actually those words that prompted the Gaza Great March of Return. And we saw in that action that in 2018, 2019, how many, what was largely nonviolent protests, how many Palestinians were injured and killed, even medical personnel, media personnel, by the Israeli military. And it's important to keep those stories alive. So we work to bring people like Ahmed and Dr. Yasser forward to be able to speak in their own words about what's happening there. We have projects. We were able through that event to support the Gaza Community Mental Health Program. We have other projects in Gaza. The Rachel Corrie Ramadan football tournament was one that originated with friends of Rachel in Gaza and continues, and is sport is really an important piece. I think we all understand that even more after COVID. Craig and I will turn on the sport channels to have a little distraction from our isolation here at home this year. And sport is really important, particularly to young people in Gaza, where, there's the average age is 18 years of age in Gaza. And 65% of the people living in Gaza, over 2 million people now living in Gaza, are under the age of 25. So the unemployment rate is tremendous. It's tremendously high, and even higher for that age group. So we're not a humanitarian organization, but we try to support grassroots activities like the Ramadan football tournament, the tournament for athletes for the disabled. There's a program, Palestinian Cultural Palace program, that brings youth, young men, young women together in arts activities and performance activities. So this is some of our work. We have scholarship programs, but I still see, and particularly at this time, our advocacy work. We have a newly elected member of Congress, and we've just recently met with her staff, our people from our organization and from Jewish Voice for Peace Tacoma. We'll be meeting with the Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland herself early in April. That work is very important to our organization as well.
I think, Mauri, because of sad circumstances, of course, our voice is about Israel-Palestine. And Rachel would have always wanted that focus to be on the Palestinians. But we also recognize that it's very similar to things that are happening all over the world in United States. So we often are working with Black Lives Matter. That's a connection. And of course, for Native Americans, it's the same story. And they know it well. And you think about apartheid South Africa and around the world, we're trying to use boycotts, sanctions, and divestment, the same sort of thing that was used successfully in South Africa to try to end the apartheid in ancient Palestinian territory. So it's bigger than what our voice normally is on, and we recognize those ties.
And it was excellent. Thank you so much for putting that webinar on, and I want to thank the aide of yours who I guess works out of the office of one of the offices of the foundation that brought it to my attention and sent me the link. On this note, I have something very, very special I want to bring to your attention, a special guest that we wanted to be a surprise guest for this conversation. One of the giants within the Palestinian community, Dr. Sami Al-Arian. So without any further ado, let us bring our brother on with that beautiful poem that he wrote years ago.
Yep.
The floor is yours, my brother. I think you're muted, Aki. You are muted.
All right. Assalamu alaikum.
There you go. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi.
I just want to say how honored I am meeting both of you. I often think of Rachel.
Well, it's amazing to see you and to see you looking so well here. And of course, we remember the poem and the correspondence and the communication we had with some of your family. It's just so wonderful to see you. Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, I speak for many people in Palestine and outside when I say, first of all, how sorry we are for your loss and how incredibly proud we are of Rachel. And she's become an icon for the Palestinian struggle. You know, I've heard with so many people in Gaza, you know, just this past week on that anniversary, sad anniversary, and she'll certainly be always remembered for many years to come on our road to the liberation of Palestine. You know, from the interview that Mauri played at the beginning of this program, you could see how eloquent, courageous, and compassionate a person she was. She was an incredible person, and I remember when she was killed by the Israeli, I was on a hunger strike actually at the time, and I cried, you know, when I heard that. And then a year later, I was in solitary confinement still, and that's when I wrote that poem. It was on her first anniversary, and I was alone, but I felt it, and I'm glad I did.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And yeah, we're so sorry about your suffering, and of course the suffering of the issue. But yeah, thank you for your love. It was amazing, you know, I was thinking about it earlier, because we had very little knowing interaction with Muslims before Rachel was killed. You know, but the support that poured out to us. And I remember going into a restaurant actually after a memorial service about a month after Rachel was killed in Charlotte. And we were sitting down to eat, and a family came in, recognized Cindy and me. And so we were all eating together as part of the family. And I said to Cindy, you know, it's like, I don't know, entering into, this is a bad analogy, but into a hot tub. We're just surrounded and supported by all this love that comes to us. And that's been our experience. And I'm sorry that we haven't been able to. I'm
completely connected with Rachel. You know, she was almost at the age of my eldest. You know, he was born in 1980. So I felt she's my daughter. I mean, that's how I felt. So that, you know, that love is genuine, and you could see every Palestinian in Gaza and others how they, you know, receive how they receive Rachel and how they receive people who come to them, and that love and compassion is part of the struggle also, because without it, the struggle will have no meaning.
I am happy to have Rachel's story continue to be shared for what I consider the right reasons, for the opportunity in it, you know, to help to bring bring more people to understand about this issue and to take the action. I think we're making progress, but of course it's far too slow. I mean, one of the sad things is that here we are 18 years after Rachel's death, and you know, the conditions in Gaza certainly and throughout have just worsened.
That's right.
But the, you know, we are seeing a change in the discourse here in the U.S. and even in the U.S. Congress a bit, you know, and we've had letters that have gone from members of Congress to the State Department just this past week about the vaccine situation. Also from Representative Tlaib and others that signed on with her, demanding responses or asking for responses to letters that were sent by members of Congress during the previous administration that were not answered. And they're now asking the State Department to respond to those. I know that there's reason, you know, to think that it's going to be a slow process here, but I think that this administration does give voice to human rights, at least, and I think that we can utilize that. I'm hoping that we can utilize that to make some positive changes. So we'll just keep working at it and keep sharing Rachel's story to help do that to the extent that it can be a help.
I totally agree. Now we have American blood that was shed with Palestinian blood. So it is on the same struggle. And I believe that we are marching for progress. I came to the United States in 1975, stayed there for 40 years. I could see that we have made a tremendous change from where we were, decades ago. So I believe that we are going in the right direction. It is slow for sure, but that's how it starts. Start slow, and then momentum builds up. And I don't think apartheid is going to continue. I mean, the struggle in South Africa was there for decades, but it eroded and it crumbled in a few years. And I think that's what's going to happen also in Palestine.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Yes.
Sammy, do you have that poem in front of you?
I do.
Please share it with us.
I would love to do that. It's called The Daughter of Palestine. The most gentle amongst all honorable women had a spirit as dazzling as the Garden of Eden. A shy smile, a sharp mind, a fervent character that was hardly hidden. Her only weapons were a determined will, a magnificent presence, a piercing pen. But her departure was tragic, heartbreaking, and sudden. A tiny body standing before oppression and destruction. A bulldozer with a driver who was a monstrous fiend, crushing her tender bones, her little frame, but not the truth she tried to glean. Her last words were, "Stop, do not destroy," before leaving the ugly scene. Her courage was unique and superior, the truest it's ever been. O Rachel, the martyr, the immortal, the saint, the pious queen. Rest in peace, my dear daughter. Your voice is heard aloud. Your mission shall go on, all friends have already vowed. Peace based on justice, your beautiful dream and mine. We shall overcome, they all sing. Evil shall be defeated despite the denial of the official line. Tried vehemently to whitewash your blood, but to the conspirators, responsibility history will surely assign. Mom and Dad couldn't be more proud. They'll miss you every birthday, on Thanksgiving, on Valentine's. Tears are on every cheek for a vivid spirit, a bright star that will forever glow and shine. All mothers are in mourning, grieving in silence for the daughter of Palestine.
In the spirit of that poem, it reminds me of what one of the Palestinian brothers said to me a year or two after Rachel was martyred. He said there were many, and that could have been you, Brother Sammy. I was told that there were a good number of Palestinian babies that were born, female babies that were given the name Rachel in honor of Rachel Corrie.
That's right.
Yeah, my goodness. So, it's a reminder, Cindy and Craig, there's a verse in the Quran, do not say of those who are slain in the way of God that they are dead. They are alive, receiving sustenance from their Lord, though you perceive it not. And, this is the beautiful, the gift to the martyr, someone who whose life is sacrificed for truth and for justice. I'm also reminded by the work that you all have continued to do in your daughter's name of a hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, one of the sayings, a tradition of our beloved Prophet Muhammad. He said, when the son, and of course this equally applies to the daughter of Adam, dies, nothing will be of greater benefit to him than three things: a continuous charity, some useful knowledge he has left behind, and a child who will pray for him. And Rachel has all three of these by the grace and mercy of Allah, and the spirit, the love, and the the devotion, the respect that she has evoked in so many people around the world who have who know of her. You know, it's really, really amazing. You know, we're, as I knew would be the case, this program, this 1 hour has gone much too fast. We have just about 5 minutes left. I want to give both of you, Cindy and Craig, I want to give both of you an opportunity to share whatever you want to share in these closing minutes. We're also going to hear from our brother Sammy. In fact, brother Sammy, let's hear from you first, and then we'll hear from Cindy and Craig, and then we will close out with that inspirational video, the final video that we want to show for today's program. But Sammy, you first.
I just want to say how happy I am to share the stage with both of you. It's always been a wish, and that has been fulfilled because of Brother Mauri. And I just want to say things happen in life. Sometimes we do not understand, especially tragedies. But I believe in the case of Rachel, we know that she has become that symbol for freedom, that symbol of courage, that symbol of liberation. And she has inspired so many in Palestine. And I think because of that history of the United States also being involved in that in the conflict in an ugly way, people also saw the beautiful side of America, you know, with people like Rachel. And I think that by itself speaks volume. And I think we need more to see it, not necessarily obviously with the sacrifices, but with those people who will speak out. And I think we're seeing this, and that is very, very important for this region to know. And I want to thank you so much for having brought Rachel. Even she didn't live much, but she has become part of many Palestinians' lives. Thank you.
Cindy and Craig.
Thank you for those very kind words. And I thank you both for remembering with us. You know, Rachel is, of course, a part of every day of our lives. And in some ways, this week and March 16th, they're not a lot, those are days that aren't a lot different from all the others. She's just a part of each day, our thinking, and of course we feel her love and presence. I'm reminded, and Mauri will have heard me say this before, I've been reading a book by the Dalai Lama and by Bishop Desmond Tutu on joy and finding joy.
Yes.
And one of the points in the book that really resonates with me is that all of us experience loss. And it's hard to think of an issue where there's been greater loss than this one for so many people. But out of the loss, Bishop Tutu and the Dalai Lama speak of the opportunity that comes. And from that opportunity comes joy. And when I think about that, I think that that's really what sustained me and our family in a lot of ways, is that Rachel left us with a lot of opportunity. It was clear from the beginning. And so I'm just grateful for all those who support us and uplift us in the work that we're doing, just as you have today, both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to listening to both of you and then to my wife, I was thinking about, well, you know, I sometimes say Rachel was always in my heart, but of course, when she was alive, she was sometimes in my face as well. A good daughter will argue with her father, and how much I just kind of like to think that she is able to see how much more her father has learned over the years. And I was thinking about that a little bit earlier and thinking, you know, I learned a lot in the last 18 years. But I remember before thinking, well, I learned a lot, and maybe I should admit that at age 74, I've still got a lot to learn. So I don't know. It's been fun and interesting and a learning experience to talk to the both of you today. So thank you for this experience.
This has been such a pleasure for me to mark the first year anniversary with Salam Media with this program. This has been the most special program of the programs we've done over the past year for me, and it's been a real pleasure. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to close out, as I normally do with my broadcast, with a very short prayer verse from the Quran, and then we're going to end with that last video, that last short video of this amazing fifth grader, Rachel Corrie. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr, innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati. Wa tawasaw bil haqq. Wa tawasaw bis sabr. Which means, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, verily humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.
I'm here for other children. I'm here because I care. I'm here because children everywhere are suffering, and because 40,000 people die each day from hunger. I'm here because those people are mostly children. We have got to understand that the poor are all around us and we're ignoring them. We have got to understand that these deaths are preventable. We have got to understand that people in third world countries think and care and smile and cry just like us. We have got to understand that they are us, we are them. My dream is to stop hunger by the year 2000. My dream is to give the poor a chance. My dream is to save the 40,000 people who die each day. My dream can and will come true if we all look into the future and see the light that shines there.
Assalamu alaikum.